Hello everyone, Dr. Amanda here. And today we're going to be discussing bone health. I had a question recently asking how can I increase my bone density or bone health? And you may be wondering, Dr. Amanda, why is this important? And it's important because we want to live a healthy life and we don't want to get to the more elderly years of our life and then end up falling and having a hip fracture, especially because hip fractures actually can reduce or not reduce, increase our risk for dying from the hip fracture or complications from a hip fracture. So hip fractures can actually lead to complications, can lead to having a blood clot in your lungs called a pulmonary embolism, increase your risk for infection, or increase your risk for heart failure, right? So we don't, again, want to have all these things go wrong and then we end up dying because we fell and had a hip fracture. And most of the time our falling causes a hip fracture, and it's falling to the side. Why that is, I don't know. But I'm sure there's some research out there that I may have to look into. So it's actually been documented and thought that up to 1 in 3 people over the age of 50 that have a hip fracture actually die within the first 12 months of their hip fracture. And when I saw this statistic, I was like, wow, we definitely need to talk about bone health. So what can we do to increase our bone health? So first off, if you watch me for any time, you may think dairy, because we like calcium. We need to have more calcium in our diet. And that's really not the case, because there have been some studies out there that show that people that have a high intake of dairy actually have a higher rate of hip fractures, which we just talked about, how hip fractures increase our risk for dying, right? And from complications from the hip fracture. So we don't want that. And that's because it's thought that dairy can increase the acid or acidity in our body, and therefore our body is trying to become more balanced and therefore pulls the calcium from our bones into our bloodstream, trying to balance out that acid buildup. So we want to try to avoid dairy. So avoiding things doesn't necessarily tell us what we're supposed to do, right? So what can we do to increase our bone density or bone mass? So the first thing, of course, is eating a healthy diet. And what foods exactly do we want to try to increase? And I actually have notes here, so I'm going to actually look down and see. So phytates are foods, are nutrients in foods that actually help with bone mass. And initially we were thought that that actually was the opposite, because it would actually cause us not to absorb calcium. But later studies have shown that maybe that's not the case. So what can we do? So whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds are the most common. But of course, I like to focus on vegetables. So there's some vegetables that may have higher phytates in them that you can actually eat to help increase your bone mass. So that would be sweet potatoes, which is one of my favorite things to eat. And sweet potatoes are very easy to prepare and make. Usually I just do a baked sweet potato. So I just take it, rinse it off, or wash it off, poke little holes in there and put it in the oven for like 35-40 minutes till it's soft, because I like to make like a smashed sweet potato, and just add a little bit of cinnamon on there. I mean, you can do that, eat it for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That's an easy way to get it in. And then there's beets and carrots, and actually turnips that have some phytates in there that can actually help increase our bone mass. So again, beans, there's so many beans out there that you can eat. Some people are afraid that that can cause gas, but increasing them in your diet, slow rate, definitely can still help where you don't have as much gas, okay? Then, so we always want to include exercise when we talk about bone mass and bone density, because like I said, most of our Hip fractures are caused by falls, so that means our muscles may be weak, or we may be doing something different that's not actually increasing our bone mass. So cardiovascular activity is important, but also weight resistance. Our resistance exercises are very important. So there's a lot of information out there that talks about resistance training. So especially things that you would move, lateral movements to help with side balance. So you want to actually incorporate those, and doing some type of weight resistance at least 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, so we want to make sure we are eating a healthy diet, so rich in our vegetables, and actually fruit too. I didn't mention fruit, but definitely fruit. And good news for my daughter, side note, that a person that eats fruit in their younger years, so childhood, lots of fruit actually has increased bone mass, and therefore less likely to have lower bone density as they get older. So shout out to everyone that ate fruit at their younger years in childhood. So you're less likely to develop lower bone density as long as you keep it up. So definitely include your children in this, because a lot of times people think that bone mass is only important when you're older and at risk for hip fractures. But definitely starting young and implementing those lifestyle changes definitely will help as we get older, because we only get one body and we have to treat it as such. So if this information was helpful for you, don't forget to subscribe and actually share the information with your friends to help them learn about bone health. So if you have any other questions, you can always let me know. Or if you want to actually work with me further one-on-one, I'm actually offering a free 30-minute discovery wellness call where we can discuss your health and wellness goals and see if we can get you kickstarted on your journey so that you can actually go on to develop well health and enjoy your life as you continue to get older. So blessings and health to you all. Don't forget to make sure you're eating your vegetables and fruit and doing your weight resistance exercises. So that way, as you are eating healthy and getting to your older years of life, that you don't end up falling and causing a hip fracture, and therefore preventing you from living the life that you dream of. All right, bye-bye.